Welcome to Solo Journeys podcast, where every journey begins with a single step. I'm your host Sasha, and today we have a spicy topic. Is watching porn in a relationship a red flag? In this episode, we explore one of the most sensitive and often misunderstood topics in modern dating with Sean, dating coach. We discuss when watching porn is harmless and when it can become an issue. We explore how does adult industry impact you and your relationship. Stay tuned.
Is watching porn in and of itself a red flag? Definitely not. Can it become a red flag? Absolutely. There's a phrase that has served me well over the years that it's not a time, it's a feeling. So at what point in time is hard to say that it becomes a problem, but it's when it's a feeling that it's a problem in your relationship. For me to say that if a person watches porn X number of times per week, that number of times is going to be different from person to person to person. If you are super conservative, super anti porn, super whatever it may be, then you may have a zero tolerance. If a person does it at all, then that is going to be a huge red flag for you. And if that's just something that you know about yourself, then that's okay. And if you're a person who's very porn positive, we can say, and your partner watches it nearly daily, that still might not be a red flag. Before we say whether it is or isn't a red flag, let's ask you, what's your tolerance to that kind of a thing? Does it upset you? Does it matter to you? If we want to put a rule on it, the rule would be that it becomes a problem when it's negatively impacting your sex life.
Theoretically, I imagine that if I am with a partner and my partner watches porn, it might raise questions about myself. Am I not enough for my partner, or something wrong with our sexual life on behalf of women?
And I think that it's super valid what you're saying there. And I think that you're right. A lot of women do have that question raised and do have that feeling raised. Let's look at this a couple different directions. First of all, remember that their behavior is not at all about you. It's something that they do that you're starting to take personally. And obviously, as we just talked about, this can have an impact on your sex life. So this behavior can become about you, but it's not something that started with you. Watching porn in and of itself is probably a coping mechanism that they developed for a different reason, just like everything else that's dopamine related. Just like if a person drinks alcohol, just like if a person smokes cigarettes, just like if a person goes to the gym 5 days a week. These are all dopamine behaviors. None of those would you sit there and go, oh, am I not enough? And I understand that because this is sex related and you, their partner, are supposed to be their primary source of sexual activity, would take this personally, but it's not about you. Second of all, it's not your job to understand why they do what they do. This is a behavior that probably started before you. But if you're sitting there and you're feeling that, I think the first question to ask before you bring this to your partner is, why does this bother you? What's going on? Why would them watching images on their screen affect the way that you feel about yourself and your own value? There's not really a right or wrong answer. And this is just time for you to do some gentle exploring inward. Like, what's going on? What insecurities are being poked at there? If you need to have a conversation with your partner, how can you do that not from a place of shame or judgment? Because again, watching porn is probably a coping mechanism. He probably already has some internal dialogue going on there. And the goal shouldn't be to make that worse. The goal should be to make the relationship better. If you're in a space where these insecurities are coming out and you're having these feelings, you don't want to come and have a conversation that's, I need you to stop this immediately because it's so bad because what you're doing to me. Again, let's go back to the window of tolerance and your personal range of tolerance. There's a couple benchmarks along the way to look for to gauge. So, if he is an occasional porn user, whatever you classify as occasional, is that actually a big deal? Is that going to impact your sex life at all? We're just going to dream up some examples here. If you have a man who's watching porn every day, but you in your sex life are still having sex with him every day, Are you actually negatively impacted? How high is his libido? And is he just using this to manage an extremely high libido? If he is choosing to watch porn over having sex with you, obviously that's when we're getting into being a problem. Once again, this is going to be issues of things that he deals with before. I had a client in the past who started dating a guy. She had issues with this. This guy had subscriptions to all the major porn sites as well as many girls only fans. And his Instagram is full of their photos. She didn't know that when she started dating him. Months into the relationship, she finds out that he's paying for a woman's OnlyFans. In her mind, in her feelings, he's cheating on me.
I understand her.
There's one of these benchmarks is whether they are or are not paying for it. And there's something about the direct contact of OnlyFans where it's he is has contact and he is paying a singular woman for porn. I'm not saying that it's right or wrong because that's going to be up to you and your perception, but I understand that many women feel that that is a specific barrier crossed when they are paying a singular woman for porn because it feels like direct contact versus when it's just being consumed on a porn site and they're sitting there searching it up. There's a level of barrier of difference, right?
A coping mechanism. Can we explore this area a little bit more in depth to understand what needs a man cover from your experience as a dating coach?
Why do people drink? Why do people smoke? Why do people use drugs? To give a singular answer would be failing an entire community. So instead of answering that there's a singular need because there's not, it could be that they have a need for connection. It could be that they have a need for stimulation. It could be that they have a need for dopamine in general. It could be that they have a need for feeling desired. There's an endless number of things and exactly what was going on in their life that they realized that, oh, this is a way that I can fill this. We can't really know that. I would say that currently in modern times, it's really common for boys to discover porn around puberty. And at that point in time, it's just filling their sexual desire, and they never learn to reroute a need. It can be for an absolute wide number of things. Maybe they were addicted to something else before they stopped doing drugs, and then they found that, hey, this is another easy way to feel good.
As a man and as a coach, do you see a danger in watching porn?
Absolutely. Let's, again, all things in moderation. If this is something that you do in a small amount on a regular basis and whatever you consider small, that's okay. And I don't think that it's shameful whatsoever. If this is something that you enjoy doing, I think that it's okay. However, especially in young men, we're seeing that young men and women are having way less sex than any generation before them, far, far less. And that's not a good thing. And a big part of that is that they're getting their needs outsourced. It's just like social media is connection is being sold to us disguised as connection. Porn is being sold as sex, but it's actually loneliness, right? It's not real connection, but it's enough of a proxy to where the brain is becoming somewhat satisfied. But that proxy, especially when used on a daily basis, on a regular basis, is not a good thing. Personally, I'm not a big porn user. However, I can tell you that if you get onto the sites, the things that are being sold these days is so much more extreme. Just like think about a television show that you watched 30 years ago
Mm-hmm.
and think about television shows that are coming out now. It's so much more extreme and they're tugging on your emotions so much more and things are being oversold so much more because humans are getting far less humans are getting so much more used to overstimulation and it takes so much more to evoke emotional response. And this is happening in television, this is happening in movies, this is happening in your social media, and this is also happening in porn. We're having very young men who are already desensitized or needing Viagra. And you couple that with a much larger issue that we'll only touch on here. But if you look at the trends of hormones, especially in people in America, but in Western countries, testosterone levels are shooting down.
Do you think it's connected to porn
I
watching?
don't think I don't think that that's connected to porn watching at all. I think that that's its own separate issue. To
Mhm.
touch on it very quickly, if you look into the hormones in our food, the chemicals that are being used in our soap, you're seeing now that boys are going through puberty much later. Look up photos of people who are graduating high school right now and look up photos of people who are graduating high school 30 years ago. Back then, the boys looked like men at 18 and the girls still looked a little bit like girls. And now girls are going through puberty much earlier and men are finishing puberty much later. The comparison is stark. So, this is its own separate issue. But when you have boys who are not
Mm.
really reaching these high levels of testosterone and their sexual needs are being met through online space and they don't even have the desire or the ability to go out and make real meaningful relationships that lead to sex, that is a problem.
It's quite complex issue actually.
Yeah. Everything is, right?
Maybe there are other recommendations that we can share with audience out there for those who consume porn and also for those who find themselves in a connection with people who watch porn.
I just want to remind you that if this is something that you're having trouble not doing and it's something that's having a big impact in your life, this is an addiction. This is something that has very addictive qualities. This is something that is causing a chemical reaction in your brain. And I'm not saying that you can't get through an addiction alone because you can, but let's be real about what it is here. And let's be honest that the best place for you to go is going to be to seek professional help. Something like a therapy, or there are porn addiction groups similar to AA. There are resources for you to look into, and I would look into professional resources. Also, talk to someone. This is a super common thing. You don't need to be ashamed. There are tons of other men that feel exactly the same way that you do. People who are in relationships that are being impacted by this, you're going to have to talk to your partner. Do you already have the skills to have these kinds of conversations? When you talk to your partner about other issues in the relationship, how do those conversations go? Are they well received? Can you communicate with them? Are you able to have expectations of them that, hey, this is going on. I think that we need to make a change. How did those previous conversations gone? If those conversations haven't gone well, then maybe you need to learn some more skills about how to have those conversations. Maybe you need to seek out couples therapy. Maybe you need to seek out other resources. All you can do is present the information to them. You can't understand it for them. You can learn better ways to present the information, but they're going to take it the way that they're going to take it. If they are already well receiving when there's issues in the relationship, then just talk to your partner. Just
Mhm.
have that conversation. Just say, hey, and again, we don't want to start with pointing fingers and blaming. We want to start with what you're feeling and why you're feeling it. I would lead with something along the lines of, I want us to have a more healthy sex life. Can you help me with that? And then go on to talk about the way that you feel about porn, not from a place of shame. We've talked about it being a coping strategy. Just ask them the question, why do you watch it? And then shut up.
Don't
Like,
comment on that.
give them time and hold space for that answer. Don't say a single word until they have fully stopped and explained. Even if they pause in the middle, give him time to get through those pauses. Give him time to get through that process. And don't say a word until he says, I'm done. Allow him the time to answer and receive that information. This is your partner. Have a partnership. And then come to him ready and willing to make agreements, make adjustments. Maybe you need to watch it together. I don't know what the answer is for you guys. If you really want to make your relationship work, come to everything with an open mind and an open heart and be willing to work through it together and be willing to come in and find other resources like counseling, coaching, reading books together, having conversations. This might not be something that you talk about one time and it's done. Maybe this is going to be an ongoing issue that's going to take some work.
Do you think this recommendation would also fit to the early stage relationships?
Every person on this planet is going to come with stuff. No one's perfect, especially in this modern day and age, I would say 90% of people have some form of dopamine dysregulation these days, just from cell phones, social media, stuff like that. However, you need to know what works for you. You need to know what you are and are not willing to tolerate. And you need to know what foundations you are and are not willing to build a relationship on. So if this is a major problem for you and you're on the second date, is that a relationship that you want to continue? If you're finding this out on a second date, I want to know how you found out. Let me know about that.
That's a good one. Thank you for sharing again your experience and knowledge, well rounded tips. This conversation is a reminder that there is no one size fits all answer. What matters most is understanding yourself, your boundaries, your needs, and what feels right in a relationship. Instead of jumping to conclusions, take time to reflect on what truly bothers you and why. If this topic raised questions for you, don't avoid them, talk about them. Honest conversations without shame or blame are what builds stronger and healthier connections. And if you still have questions, feel free to share them in the comment section. We will be happy to continue the conversation. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow the show so you don't miss what's coming next.